Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in yet again for Chad Benson. Chad is back next week. I am thrilled to be here with you on a Friday, a hopefully very fun Friday, and yet I start off with some news that to me is not always the most fun, and yet, I don't know, we'll go this way. First, though, and probably the least shocking bit of information, Amy Klobuchar no longer attempting to be the vice presidential candidate. That's something that broke yesterday. I'm not surprised. You're not surprised. Her record got a little bit rough, especially in Minneapolis and in Minnesota, where things were, very tense after the death of George Floyd. Here is what Amy said yesterday while talking about stepping down and who she thinks, without naming a specific name, should be the vice presidential candidate for one Joe Biden.
I have never, as you probably know, on many, many shows since I endorsed the vice president on that joyful night in Dallas, I've never commented on this process at all.
Okay, I have to stop for just a second. That joyful night in Dallas, I cringe a little whenever people describe things in those kind of terms, because I don't know that every human being was like, whoa, yeah, it's joyful, this or that, whatever. I don't know, but that joyful night in Dallas. All right, fine, continue.
But let me tell you this, after what I've seen in my state, what I've seen across the country, this is a historic moment, and America must seize on this moment. And I truly believe, as I actually told the vice president last night when I called him, that I think this is a moment to put a woman of color on that ticket. And there are so many incredibly qualified women. But if you want to heal this nation right now, my party, yes, but our nation, this is sure a hell of a way to do it. And that's just what I think after being through this in my state.
So I think without naming any names, I can fill in some blanks for you. I think Kamala Harris would be the option of choice then for one Amy Klobuchar. And honestly, I think a lot of people might be leaning that way. So that seems to be what could be coming in the near future, some sort of an announcement of that. For Amy, though, as a human being that seems to not really understand when to duck out of things, she doesn't know when to give up on a lot of different campaigns that she runs, which amuses me quite a bit, obviously. This was coming for just a bit. There had been questions about the way in which she handled certain things during her time in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, I should say. And so when that situation comes up, when you're dealing with a unprecedented kind of, begging for things to change from a lot of voices within this country, and then you have a person who was hoping to be a vice presidential candidate who certainly wouldn't have embodied those requests, that's not going to work out. What I found also interesting is that I heard that President Trump is looking to debate Joe Biden a bunch. So I don't know if Kamala Harris will be allowed to attend those debates. I assume the answer is no, because it usually is not the way. Usually the presidents debate each other. But I'm sure that Joe Biden would not hate it if Kamala maybe showed up from one or two times. It's sort of like picking your champion, right? Like if you had to do some sort of battle and you don't want to be the one to fight it, you choose a champion to fight for you. That might be the only way Joe Biden beats the president in debates like that. And I think it is really interesting that the president wants more. And the argument he has for it is I think, somewhat valid without trying to be biased. He's saying that, with everything going on from a health standpoint, we should get these debates happening sooner, and we should probably have more of them so that they're all in the public conscious if we're wind up incapable of having them late in the year. So he's being very cognizant of the health situation going on and saying, here's what we need. We need me and Joe debating each other a bunch for you to see who the best candidate is, because you're continuing to hear a bunch of stories about the approval rating of the current president. It's bad. It's real bad. And it's not just the approval rating. It's actually the lead that Joe Biden may have, according to a lot of different polls in potentially battleground areas and significant areas. I said this the other day when I was filling in on this show. We've seen all that information before as far as what polls are saying. But at the same time, you can't be completely you can't completely ignore the world in which we're living right now, the world in which John Bolton, a former top advisor to the president, is now writing a book about how horrible and terrible this person is. Some of the things that have been quoted in the last few days. And look, I'm going to criticize the book a bunch. I'm probably going to read it. I'm just being honest with you. I can't I can't stop myself from doing that. I don't know that it's a good thing. I certainly don't know that it's a good thing that the book is coming out. As also actually Fred Fleitz, the former chief of staff for John Bolton, is also unsure if it's a good thing that this book is coming out. And he did another interview. I'll get to that in a second. But as I say that, some of the quotes, some of the pieces of information that have come out about this, Trump allegedly wanted to have journalists killed. That's a real thing. That's a real thought that may have been shared at some point with I don't know what level of seriousness, if it actually happened at all. And it's in the book. And obviously journalists are going to love asking the president the next time, whatever times they can throw lob questions his way about that, among other things. But he apparently, according to John Bolton, very much doesn't like some people. And it's just crazy to think that that could even be a real thing. There's no way that that's true in my mind. But here, let's get to the former chief of staff for John Bolton. Let's see what he thinks from an interview he gave just the other day about this book and about, a guy that he's known for 30 years.
Well, I was on your show in January, and I called him to withdraw the book because I don't believe national security advisors should be revealing internal candid discussions with the president. The president has to be able to know that whatever he says in those discussions won't be made public. And if he thinks they're going to be made public, a president won't consult with experts. And I think that's a very dangerous prospect for our national security.
So that was the first point. This point has been made for a little while now. I think John Bolton's book was talked about at the beginning of the year and for a bit. This is a really valid point, in my opinion, beyond whether or not the things within the book, which John Bolton assures you are not classified, and the president says are highly classified things. Obviously, both sides maybe somewhat adding that narrative because it benefits them. But more importantly, the role that John Bolton had, the insider information that he'd glean within his time working with the president, it makes sense to me that you wouldn't want someone like an advisor of that level to just give out conversations. And if they do that, if you learn that, and the president certainly is learning that a lot of people who work with him might write books, he might wind up having less and less people giving him expert opinions for him to judge his decisions based on. And that would be a huge problem. That would be obviously something that no president would want to be in a situation to have to live through and deal with. And we would want more voices in the room as much as possible, no matter who the president is, no matter how intelligent or how many smart decisions you think he's capable of making. Advice is never going to hurt a guy. But here, let's continue, because the second part of this conversation is actually the most interesting. One of the very good friends of John Bolton and former chief of his staff, says that he thinks there's kind of proof in his mind as to why the book might not be valid, as why the book might not be true. Here is what he said about that.
Well, I want to talk about this in terms of what John Bolton called the turning point for him with Mr. Trump, which Bolton said was the most irrational thing I ever saw a president do. And this was when President Trump decided last June not to bomb Iran at the advice of John Bolton and other national security advisors. You may remember that a drone was shot down. And at the last minute, President Trump decided he was not going to attack Iran because we would have killed 100 to 200 people. Now, Martha, that was a principled decision. This wasn't to win votes. This wasn't to promote the president domestically. It reflected the president's principle not to get America into additional wars.
I actually really agree so far with what's been said here, that not only did I agree at the time that it was intelligent not to bomb Iran, I think that's actually the first time I filled in on the show when that was going on. And I said that, a lot of people had accused the president of being a guy that we couldn't trust with huge military decisions because he's going to make the wrong one all the time. We're going to be inevitably in a bunch of different wars. And I know that thoughts on the president are all over the place, but certainly that moment proved to a lot of individuals that maybe they had overly concerned themselves with how trigger happy the president that they didn't like or didn't vote for may have been. So that is an interesting comment in and of itself. But here we go. Here's the rest of it.
And it was an act of leadership because he bucked all of his national security advisors. I mean, Pompeo, the Secretary of Defense. So when we hear that the president doesn't have principles, he's not qualified to lead, this incident that Bolton puts forward as the turning point for his relationship with President Trump, in my mind, it disproves the whole book.
Now, the reason why I think he's saying that it disproves the whole book is because more than anything else, to me, it maybe demonstrates motive. It demonstrates a reason why he would want to write something as disparaging about the current president of the United States as he did, and it may not necessarily have anything to do with validity, truth, whatever other words you want to use for that. What's interesting to me about this whole concept, though, and something I've talked about a bit, and I've even seen on both sides of the talking heads that exist on all of the TV stations, why didn't John Bolton testify when the president was going through an impeachment process? Why? If you had information that was tremendously valuable, if you had pieces of notes or whatever, you'd had proof to say these are things that occurred, why wouldn't you use the information then in order to help protect our country by getting someone that you obviously believe shouldn't be in office out of office? Why would you do it an utterly different way? And I know there's an ABC interview coming up that's been promoted like crazy. And in it, I think the latest clip says that John Bolton promises there's nothing that's untrue in the book, and there's nothing that's a top secret, a thing that shouldn't be released to the public. If you wanted to protect our country, if you wanted to provide the service that you think you're providing now, why wouldn't you do it in the form where it's most valuable and the way in which you're not going to financially succeed? There's no monetary value. There's no amount of money you get paid for going and testifying, I assume, unless you ask for some, Johnny. But if you don't do it that way, if you do it a different way, this makes sense to me if you go the other road. And now there's no way that you can look at this and not question the reasoning, not question the decision-making behind it. There's just no way. If I ever in my life were to write a book instead of making some other decision, there's a monetary reason to do that. That it's always that way. If I'm going to tell a story here on the air, I may or may not get paid a whole lot to do it. But if I tell it in book form, then you get paid a whole bunch of money to do that, especially if you're someone with access to someone like President Trump, who a lot of people, they'll read anything that says he's the guy they think he is, even if it's not true. Even if it's not true, and I don't know that it is. I want to say, as a caveat, I have no idea what's valid in all this. I think that I know based on the decisions and the way they were made, but I don't, and you don't. And so if you read the book and you believe the book, that's fine. That's on you. I would just say that it would have made so much sense, as I'm trying to say, to have done it a very different way than this way in order to be fully believed and not at very least, questioned. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. It's a Friday. I want to have a lot more fun. I will try to have fun throughout the show, and hopefully you stick with us. More after this.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Chad is back next week. I'm thrilled to be with you on a Friday. I said I want to have fun. I want to have lighthearted conversations as much as I can because it's almost the weekend. And even though for a long time we were all stuck in our houses and had no idea what day it was, I promise it's pretty much almost the weekend here on a Friday afternoon, evening. However you're doing, I hope you're doing it well. I want to say this, though, real quick, as much as I can and throughout the show. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day coming up to all our fathers out there. I have a list of 6 last-minute things that you can do, which I like, that they don't seem last-minute as potential gifts for Dad. So if you're still unsure of what to get him, and time is definitely running out, I have some things, some tips that I'll get to in a bit here, a little bit later on in the show, that'll help you convince him that you definitely tried earlier to get him that gift that he so desperately wanted, even though, yeah, you definitely got it right after listening to an idiot on the radio. I want to talk about this, though, because this is, to me, another very dumb decision that was made and sort of a surreal decision that was made. A 22-year-old by the name of Dylan Robinson got caught for being one of the people that rioted and looted in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was setting off Molotov cocktails, blowing things up, lighting things on fire, whatever the right words for that are. He snapped it. He put it all on Snapchat, a social media platform. He even put comments on some of the videos that he and his friends put up on that platform, showing his face while he's committing a crime, something to the effect of, these guys have never made a Molotov, silly rookies, and then lighting things on fire and chucking them at places that he's damaging. This is his choice. he put it on social media. That I don't understand at all the celebration that would occur in these types of things. I understand the upset, the frustration well, to some extent, understand all that stuff as far as the peaceful protesting that's been going on in our country. I'll never understand the other stuff, but just more importantly, and way beyond the issues of right now, as far as social media and young people go, I don't understand highlighting crime. I just don't get it. Why would anyone that does something tremendously illegal like this choose to put it out on video for their friends to check it out? You know who else saw this video inevitably? The police. And they were able to pinpoint who you were because you're all over it. You're sitting there smiling and doing things that are very stupid things, very illegal things to do, and you're going to get in trouble. He's been arrested. I just can't imagine what goes through the head of a human that not only decides to, and not even just in this situation, but any situation, do something illegal and put proof out there themselves. That's for a long time been a joke that people would tell you, oh, the guy testified and in the court, they played the video of him committing the crime. That is a comedic joke that you're told, but now it exists, and it happens way more often than it ever should. There's no need to have lawyers in this case. There's no need to have anyone involved in this. You just roll in the video, a la the joke, play it, and then it's him making comments about how he's definitely the guy doing that. I mean, I can't believe it. I don't understand. In other criminal news, if that's the segment I'm doing real quick, and I know we got to get out of here in a second, but Lori Loughlin is back in the news to Aunt Becky, who will very likely be going to jail for some amount of time after agreeing to a plea deal and pleading guilty to something we knew she did a long time ago in the Varsity Blues stuff. She's really scared of jail now because she's also afraid of getting COVID-19 there. She's petrified of going to jail and getting COVID-19. I think that's a rational fear. I think that a lot of people are afraid of that, Aunt Becky. I'm not sure that helps all that much, but that is what's in the news with her. Good news, though, Aunt Becky. You can self-administer a test. I'll talk about that, too, in a bit. Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. I am Craig Collins filling in, hanging out with you on a Friday. I have fun stuff planned. I have ideas for Father's Day gifts. If you've slacked a little bit and don't have anything yet, they are last minute, but they don't seem last minute. At least that's what this article tells me online, and that was enough for me to click on a thing because I'm a clickbait kind of human. But before I get to that, I want to talk about something that Tucker Carlson had on his show last night, something that I thought was interesting. Tucker at times has takes that I like and at times has takes that I don't understand. I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way about all kinds of people. But here is Tucker Carlson talking about what is a surprising story, certainly a difficult story to truly parse out 100% for sure what happened. I know that Tucker has an opinion, and I know that I have an opinion, but certainly they are, unfortunately, at best, opinions in all this. But here, this is what he was talking about last night at a point on his show.
So we've been telling you the story of the police officer charged, Officer Rolfe. Until today, his stepmother, her name is Melissa Rolfe, was the HR director at a place called Equity Prime Mortgage in Atlanta, Georgia. But today, she was let go. She's no longer in that role. Apparently, she was fired, and her only crime was being Officer Rolfe's stepmother. According to a source familiar with the matter who spoke to this program, Rolfe was promised that her job was safe, but today she was told, and we're quoting, "We have to terminate our relationship with you." No other explanation was offered, and honestly, no other explanation was needed. It was obvious what happened. This is where the country is going. It's becoming a place where you can be punished for the supposed misdeeds of your relatives.
Okay. This is an interesting topic. The actual firing for sure did happen. Officer Rolfe's stepmother, did lose her job. Obviously, we're dealing with an economy that is utterly different than any economy we've ever seen. So a lot of people have lost their jobs. The fact that everything was scrubbed from the website of the company that let her go as soon as they let her go is odd, but maybe not also totally unprecedented. These are the questions I throw out there, at least the statements I throw out there, to demonstrate that you can't be 100% sure why things go the way that they go. But the fact that 2 officers are charged in the Atlanta death of another black individual at the hands of white officers, that it's a lot more complicated. To say it as simplistically as possible, I'm going to try to be as sensitive as possible, but really truly say it in a factual way. It's a much more complicated situation than George Floyd, just from witnessing the video and what will inevitably be the conversation that takes place in the court of law, and even listening to Judge Knapp or anyone else that talks about the way in which that works legally compared to anything that you had seen before, certainly the things that made people the most upset. And now you have Officer Rolfe's stepmom getting fired from her job because they need to terminate their relationship with her. It is at this last point that Tucker Carlson makes is the one that I think goes well beyond any racial and civil unrest that might exist, any issues that come up in the near or long-term future on all kinds of sides, in all kinds of different conversations. It wouldn't necessarily just be ones that are as important as this one for people to go out and peacefully protest. It might be a lot lesser of a thing in the future that we see a similar reaction. But this last part where he mentions...
This is where the country is going. It's becoming a place where you can be punished for the supposed misdeeds of your relatives.
If the Twitter mob can come out in force and encourage companies to make all kinds of decisions based on whatever they feel is inappropriate. I mean, I have a story in the New York Times about how high school students right now who maybe obviously had a semester where they didn't spend a lot of time in the classroom, so they had extra time in their hands. They were on social media even more than teens probably already are, which I can't fathom, but it's a thing that happened. They're choosing to out racists using social media platforms, and these are not just well-known, high, public figures. These are their friends. These are people that they know, other 16, 17, 15-year-olds who may have done something that at times actually seems kind of bad. They might have used language that they shouldn't have used. They might have done quite a few different things. But any sort of peer-to-peer racist behavior or otherwise inappropriate behavior is getting outed on social media platforms, and some of it's going viral. The New York Times in detail covers this new trend that is occurring, and it just further pushes a different conversation to the forefront of my mind. How appropriate is self-to-self policing, for lack of a better word, of any and all transgressions, anything that we do or don't do? In China, they have a social kind of judgment scale that you actually wind up losing things like your credit can be impacted by how well you're socially perceived. If you make a mistake on one of their platforms and you wind up with a different grade for some of the things you do, that can impact you. And so far in our country, obviously, it doesn't necessarily happen quite as above the board like that. But this is an example of people feeling that no person really deserves to, succeed, or I don't know what the really good, I'm trying to find the right words for it here. No person deserves to have a job if some family member did something as terrible as some people feel that one of the officers in Atlanta did. And obviously everyone is still mixed as to what exactly happened there. There's a lot of public sentiment that it certainly was not appropriate to have that person lose their life, that the use of force was wrong, but the degree to which they charged him for murder is something that's certainly being questioned on a legal stance. There's so many complicated issues, and I get tripped up as I even try to talk about them because I'm afraid to give you my real opinion, but I want to give you my real opinion because it's important to do it, and I am worried that we go further and further toward, not necessarily because we push back against things like systematic racism, but that our teenagers are now deciding that it's up to them to out their friends for potentially saying something that they think or doing something they think is inappropriate, and then having a whole bunch of kids, obviously all sort of maybe bullying, for lack of a better word, each other. It's a complicated and interesting future that we seem we're sending ourselves toward, and I don't know what the right decision is. I rail against social media a lot, and I think that maybe in all this, as misguided as it might be to use a a conversation as serious as most of what's happening right now in our country is to talk about the problems we have with social media, it is accurate that as we go further here, as we push down this rabbit hole, that you might find more and more people getting fired for, I don't know, someone says something insulting inside of a Target, and then all their family members don't have jobs anymore because the companies have to distance themselves from those individuals because the Twitter mob came out in force. All right, let's move on to something more fun and easier for me to talk about. Let's talk about Father's Day and some last-minute ideas, some last-minute moves you can make if you still need to get a gift for Dad and you don't want it to look like you just ran out and got him a gift. One of the options on this list I kind of question because anytime you go gift certificate, I think a lot of people assume that gift certificate means, yeah, you didn't plan this at all. You took as long as possible to get me that gift. But it says a food gift certificate. If you buy a restaurant thing for Dad, especially something that you know he really likes, maybe a restaurant certificate that just opened recently or hasn't been open a lot, it might seem like it's a little bit more thought put into it, and you can print that at home, which is what it says here is the best benefit to it. There's lots of restaurants that you can buy and print things at your house without going out, without buying anything, and it'll seem like, yeah, you really tried very hard to get a gift for Dad because you went to his favorite spot and then you got the printed. Although, again, I am going to question this as I say it. If you hand Dad a printed gift card, I think he knows you didn't shop early. Shaving supplies is another one that seemed like maybe, according to this article, took a little bit more time to prepare. There's even online websites that'll provide you same day or next day shipping on some of these things. Dollar Shave Club, The Art of Shaving, are some that are mentioned here. Not sure if they're sponsors of the show, so you're welcome for the free shout-out. But shaving supplies might feel a little bit like you put some thought into it, especially, I guess, if you go out and just buy a nice little box thing of some item. But that might feel different than a last-minute item, according, again, to whoever the heck wrote this article that I'm already disagreeing with. A massage for Dad is one of the things mentioned here. If you want to get your pop something that maybe he'd like and maybe he doesn't try a lot of, I don't know, go out and get him some sort of thing that you might more tie Mom to, get him some sort of spa day. I don't know how I'd react to that. I'm not a father. I don't have any kids, but if I got a spa day, a face mask thing or whatever they're saying that you could put on you, that would be an interesting gift, although you might enjoy it. Anybody that goes down that road and tries it out. And certainly that wouldn't look last minute because it would feel like you were taking a chance unless Dad is a guy who gets a lot of massages. It would feel like you were taking a chance. So I would assume in that world, you'd never really realize that this was something you bought day of or day before. And P.S., you can buy gift cards for that online too. Lottery subscriptions is another one that they mention here. Ever since you can remember, your father has played the same lottery number on your birthday. They've played your birthday, your mom's birthday, who's ever, or an old jersey number. You can, on Father's Day, surprise him by buying a year's worth of those tickets in advance. Several states offer subscriptions that you can fill out and purchase online. Plus, your dad might win big, and maybe he'd save some of the money. That definitely would feel like thought went into that. I know a bunch of people who play the lotto often, and I had no idea that some states allowed for this. But if you're in one of those states and you feel that you want to get him a gift that's convincing for not being a last-minute item, that certainly would work, and he'd probably be thrilled. Also, liquor. Anytime you give anybody liquor, if it's fancy, if it's top-shelf liquor, I don't think anything ever goes into when it was purchased. You never consider that. You're like, all right, this is booze, and obviously you thought I would like this if it's, if I'm a whiskey guy or whatever. So that definitely makes sense to me to be on the list. And then finally, the last one, and this is just mentioned, even though it's come up a couple times in this article already, gift cards to online stuff. If you can't figure out a gift card to anything else, get a gift card for like iTunes, a hardware store, a coffee shop, whatever it is, and then give it to Dad, but try to play it off that it's not obvious that that's last minute. See, I don't agree with this. I don't know who wrote this, but anytime you get something that's printed off an online website, you kind of know the duration that went into it. But those are good ideas. Those are definitely good ideas. And hey, you can get them for anybody in your life, all your the dads father figures you care about. So please, happy Father's Day to those that are looking forward to Sunday. And honestly, I like some of these gifts. I might just get them for myself. All right. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Got a lot more coming up. Quick break right now.
The Chad Benson Show.
where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
Hey there, it's Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Thrilled to be with you on a Friday. Going to try as much as I can to have fun. We will talk about some of the news of the day, though, because, that's also something we're supposed to do. All right, I got this story from my producer, Phil. This is a great story because it points out a lot of silly things that have gone on recently as far as the box office is concerned. Obviously, a lot of movie theaters still not allowed to be open, still not allowed to have people inside because it's complicated, depending on where you live, to do the movie theater thing. Although, to me, it's not. You sit 6 feet apart, and this should be allowed anywhere. But anyway, some of the other things that had happened in the past, a Woody Allen film that had never been released in the United States was number one on the planet for a while. A single drive-in theater in Florida had all of a box office report. Every movie that it was airing was named 1, 2, 3, 4 because it was one of the only places serving people at the time. Now there's this, a movie called Unsubscribe from a creator, a filmmaker named Christian Nielsen, became number one in the nation last week because he rented out a movie theater knowing that it would work, knowing that he would juice his numbers, realizing that so few places are being used to create these numbers, and noticing all the other crazy things that happened. He and a YouTuber, of course there's a YouTuber involved, by the way, of the name of Eric Tabash, were chatting about how movie theaters across the country were closed due to the pandemic, and then they joked about how they should put their theater up instantly, or they put their movie up to number one by renting out a theater, which they went ahead and did, and it totally worked. They wrote Unsubscribe and shot it over Zoom, which apparently, is a thing other people are doing. They then rented the local theater and screened the movie, a practice called four-walling. When you four-wall a movie, you pay the theater up front for the space, then you keep the proceeds for ticket sales. Buying every ticket themselves, they recoup the money they fronted on the scheme, and also they became number one at the box. How crazy, how weird that these are the kind of things that people can just trick into being a thing. And I should announce somewhat jokingly, Phil and I are in the process of making a movie. We assume it's going to be number one at the box office very soon. No idea what it'll be about, but it seems to be that easy right now to succeed in that space, and we hope for really good things. So I've announced that officially here. I'm sure that he's thrilled. Moving on, I see this story too. Tiffany Haddish has a hot take as far as what she thinks might help cure some of the problems that exist in our society. She says she can solve racism specifically. How would Tiffany Haddish, comedian, actress, do that? She said women should turn on men by withholding, not doing the happy dance, whatever you want to call it, until men all cure themselves of any problems they might have with racism. This is a quote from Tiffany Haddish. The women ain't having this with men, and I don't think they want to have it with themselves. Well, she's wrong about that to an extent, so they have to figure it out. Apparently, that's a thing that she says could work. If all women band together and decide not to sleep with any guys until we figure out how to fix society, that it'll totally work. I don't know if she was kidding when she said it, but she definitely said it. Here's the quote again. When I have problems and I want to solve them, I just stop having sex with whoever. So if everybody did the same thing, especially if you're in a relationship where maybe people are different races, it would totally make sense to withhold from a white guy. And I am paraphrasing what she said there. If you are a white woman and you've got a white man as your husband, stop doing that with him. When he isn't getting that, apparently he'll change. That's what she knows. Wow. This is on Page 6, by the way. I always thank Page 6 for being a product that's out there in the world because they give me hot takes. This is a hot take. That is, I don't know that that's the right approach, Tiffany. But okay, that's the decision you make. And I'm not saying it because I'm mad at the idea. I just don't know that those two things are connected. I don't know that if you withhold relations, it's going to wind up curing any sort of societal problem. But all right, Tiffany, good luck to you. One last story here. I got to take a break in just a bit. Lost airline luggage is getting sold online for the first time in 50 years by one of the companies that does it. Unclaimed baggage that was found in the 1970s apparently is being sold online now. I don't know if it's similar to like when you buy a storage container that someone stopped paying on and you have no idea what's in it. You just buy luggage based on the look of it from the outside. I think that'd be kind of cool. I think if there is unclaimed, long-term luggage out there in the world that no one can get back to its owner, and I guess there's a very small percentage of luggage that falls into that category, why don't we just sell it online? Why don't we just see what we get? We can all gamble with it, figure out what items look best or what, luggage might wind up being a win. You never know what's in it, but they said that if a bag is truly lost, airlines pay out a claim to the passenger. It's only after an extensive 3-month search that an unclaimed bag is deemed truly orphaned. And in those situations, which happen less than 1% of the time, makes sense to start selling it online. How would you feel, though? Like if you never got contacted, your luggage, you never knew what happened to it, and then one day you see it pop up online for sale, and on the off chance maybe there's something in it you don't want anyone to know about, you start desperately trying to bid on your own luggage. That would be an interesting situation. I can see it happening to Tiffany Haddish, of course, among maybe some other people. But yeah, this is a thing. This is a company in Alabama that's going to start doing it, just selling people's luggage online and hoping for the best there. I do really want to know, and it doesn't say here if they're opening all this stuff up or not. I assume they're not. I assume it's all closed, and you just roll with the punches. One more quote from the CEO of Unclaimed Baggage. Our customers have long requested an online version of our store. We're glad that this is part of our 50th anniversary. Shoppers are now able to experience the thrill of a hunt online. Maybe this is a good move to get for Dad. Father's Day, too. Hey, Pop, look at this. I bought you some strange luggage. Hope good things are in it. I don't know. Might work. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Thrilled to be with you on a Friday. I'm going to get silly. Because I can't help getting silly, and sometimes it helps me distract from the news that's so important, but also all over the place all the time. I saw this, and it made me laugh a lot because, okay, look, I want one. If I were a father and someone were trying to get me a Father's Day gift, this is the gift I would hit hard towards someone picking up for me, and it would be a very custom, very selfish item. But a guy recently set a Guinness World Record for his Batman costume. And there's so many layers to like what he submits to the Guinness World Record book, how many other people are doing this, and how it gets done. But it happened. The guy's got a record. What does he have a record for? The amount of working gadgets on his fake Batman costume. He's got 30 things. And if you've ever seen any version of Batman, Adam West might be my favorite as far as gadgets go. You know that he is very much tied to ridiculous amounts of gadgety things. He's got bolas, batarangs, a butane torch, a mini grappling hook, binoculars, a compass. This is the dude who set the record, a fingerprint kit. If you had a random guy dressed as Batman whip out a fingerprint kit and try to take your fingerprints, how would you react to that? I would assume many of us not well. A tracking device is also on it. I don't know why. Maybe if he loses the costume, he knows how to find it, so he gets it when I try to steal it from him, apparently. A nylon rope, which to me really doesn't totally feel like a gadget. A laser pointer, flashbangs, handcuffs. Of course, you got the handcuffs in there, bud. He's even got a cutting torch and a bunch of other different things, an extendable baton. One of my favorite things, though, when I went through the list of 30 devices that some guy in Portland put on his Batman costume to set a world record, the previous one being 23, by the way, so he crushed it, is a road flare. He has a road flare in his Batman costume, and I picture use of these items because that's who I am as a human. So on the off chance that Batman, and not real Batman, this dude who drives what kind of car? What kind of car do we guess this guy drives? I'm going Toyota Corolla. That's where I'm at. I think that he's pulled over on the side of the road because he broke down his vehicle, and he puts the road flare out from his utility belt and hopes for a lot of help in that situation. That would be, to me, my favorite moment to live through. If I drove by a fully dressed Batman with a working utility belt and a road flare going, my life would be complete. I don't know about you. And I promised you I was getting silly. That's about as silly as I can possibly get. While I talk about driving, I should also mention that 11% of people, according to a new survey, admit to taking a selfie of themselves, obviously, while driving. So this is you in a car attempting to operate a vehicle, 11% of people are like, you know what it's time for? It's time for me to put up a post on the social media. I need a quick shot of how my day looks. I looked especially great that day is what some people said in response to why they did it. I was on my way to a special occasion. You could do it at any other time. See, I always get worried that technology advancing is also horrible for us as a society, and maybe no better example than the fact that we all have cameras at our wanton disposal at any time whenever we need them. And this would be then the worst version of it. 11% admit to the selfie while driving. 25% of people said they've taken a photo or video that's not a selfie while driving a vehicle. So sometimes it's not you that you need to focus on, but I guess somebody else. 25. 1 in 4 people on the road. How scary is that? 1 in 4 people on your trip home maybe taking some sort of video with their phone and not necessarily paying attention to the driving vehicle that they're behind. The view was amazing, is one of the top reasons given for why you do that. I wanted to take a picture of severe weather. I wanted to take a picture of an accident I wasn't involved in. Who does that? You always hear that people turn and look to the side and accidents are distracting on the road visually for you. But I've never needed to photograph people involved in something. That's kind of mean, almost, in my opinion. Who are you going to show that to? Oh, look, this is an accident that I drove by that one time. Cool, man. Weird brag, bro. Thanks for that. Thanks so much for that. Moving on, I love stupid criminal stories, too. And these are things that make me laugh on a Friday. A man with a machete face tattoo was arrested for attempting to attack someone with a machete. The 25-year-old guy is Justin Couch. He's from Florida. That's not surprising. He got the machete tattooed on his face recently, and on Saturday night, he attacked a guy with his weapon of choice. Apparently, he and the guy were arguing, and Justin just whipped one out. I don't know if you argue with the guy with machete face tattoo. I don't know if you're sitting around in maybe a bar or somewhere, or I guess in this guy's backyard, but if you wind up talking to the person and you're not agreeing on things, and he's got a very apparent face tattoo of a scary weapon on it, I think you let him win the argument. The guy did go to the hospital, but he is expected to survive. He will be okay, so that's good. Apparently, Justin is not great with the machete, which is a good thing. But, man, just again, to tell you as much as I can, especially in Florida, if you go to Florida and meet a guy with a machete face tattoo, do not argue with that man. Agree with whatever he wants you to agree with, and tell him it's been nice to know you, and then get the heck away from him as soon as possible, because that's an individual you don't really want to hang out with in my opinion. I don't know. The face tattoo is always, that's a bold move. It's one that I could certainly never pull off. Maybe I'll do a fake one someday and just see what the response to me would be. Because if you'd ever met me, I'm the most inappropriate guy to have a face tattoo, and yet maybe I throw one on there just to see what it's like. Because I imagine it's a heck of an experience, and it certainly wouldn't be machete. I would go with a much different option. A California gym owner is being saluted, praised for putting these pods up that I was talking about. I think the other day, a pod up that separates each individual workout facility. More gyms are talking about how this might be a great way to solve the social distancing thing as far as gym goers go. You have a bubble essentially over each different workout location. You move locations. It's weird that gym owners are choosing to do this, because I don't think they understand one of the main things about going to the gym. I don't want to do just one machine the whole time I'm there. I want to bounce around. And if you do this individually via pod, I don't know that that's the right approach. I know that it's important for us to find ways to be safe and healthy in an unprecedented time as far as our concern about the concern about germs, concern about everything goes because of COVID-19. But this does seem to me to be a step too far. And I did see that more parents than ever are afraid for their kids getting germs, getting sick, finding any kind of, going on a slide and getting some rogue element there. That, again, just doesn't make sense to me. It does, and then it doesn't, as I think I was also telling you guys yesterday, because, come on, a lot of us grew up in different situations. We made it out okay. All right, one other silly story that I want to talk about here. I saw a story out of China that I couldn't believe, but I know factually this was a bar bet. It doesn't say in the story that it was a bar bet, but I know it was. A guy drinking beer, he had about 10, 12 beers, wound up trying to hold his bladder forever. I know that this is my version of the story now. I want to make that abundantly clear. I know that him and his buddy were at a bar. They were drinking. One guy goes, man, you gotta go to the restroom. I can tell. The other guy said something to the effect of, nah, man, I could hold it forever. Dude, you've had like 8 beers. You got to go. The guy's like, nah, I could do this any amount of time. And the bet goes down, never going to go again. The guy eventually ruptured his bladder. He's going to be okay, but yeah, you can't hold it forever. He made it 18 hours. 18 hours of drinking and not going to the bathroom. Maybe another Guinness World Record, in my opinion. That is incredible. But after that time period, and I guess he just eventually fell asleep at his house, which is another thing a lot of people do who might drink professionally. But he fell asleep at his house and then woke up to a serious situation. He was rushed to a hospital. He will also be okay. No word if he actually told the doctor what he was doing or if they just maybe reserved a wing for him for the next time he comes back. Because that is, that was a bar bet, though. Like, I've told this story to a few people now, and everyone keeps reacting by saying, oh, come on. He just held his pee because he wanted to. No, there's no situation like that. You did this because someone told you couldn't. And you decided I absolutely can. The guy's 40 years old. No word if this is the only time he's been sent to the emergency room. My guess is no. He's gone quite a few times. All right, I have one other quick thing I want to mention, actually. I saw this story about an Amazon delivery in California. A woman shows up at home. She lives in Glendale, California, to a box in her front yard with her name on it. It's her name for an Amazon package. She opens it up, and what's inside? A bunch of drugs. And I mean like a lot of drugs. And then also, which is weird, a invoice from the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. It's got oxycodone, hydrocodone, morphine in it. Her name on the box. She didn't order it. She has no idea what it's for. And there's a substantial invoice and a lot of product staring her in the face. Very confused about it. Contacts Amazon and they say, oh, it was just a packaging mix-up. We did like a labeling mistake. This is a surreal version of that. I didn't know you could mix up things in this world, and that maybe that delivery was meant for some state organization or something instead of her. But I do have a question when I talk about this story. What if she's not the one that opens that box? What if any other family member comes home, sees a box with like mom's name on it and wonders what's inside and cracks that puppy open? How do you react to that? How do you look at a family member again and assume, oh yeah, that was an Amazon packaging mistake and my mom's not secretly like a drug cartel human? Because that's what I would have assumed, that it had her actual name on it. Every piece of it seems to indicate that this is actually for the person, that the contents inside are, this all went correctly. And yet, no, this is just a third-party shipping mistake, according to an Amazon. I'm not sure that we can trust them anymore. This should probably be a more serious story because these kind of things really shouldn't happen. Amazon is tremendously popular, obviously, and a lot of people utilize it. But if you can accidentally deliver a ridiculous amount of very bad things to a random person in California, I think maybe you got to take a step back. We got to figure this out again. The regular mailman would know that was wrong. He wouldn't make that happen. All right, this is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. I'm going to be silly because I need to be silly. I hope you need to be silly too. More after this.
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Happy Friday. Happy almost Father's Day. Happy Juneteenth to everybody out there in the world. I saw this story and I thought it was interesting. You probably heard this one, actually. It's getting a lot of coverage. Oakland, California, they noticed what they thought were nooses hanging in trees, and people rightfully thought that was something that needed to be investigated, something that would be very bad, something that is obviously a symbol of racism and a lot of the horrible things that have happened to those and minorities, to black people that live in our country. And so if you just put nooses randomly in trees, that certainly in and of itself as a sentence is something that would need to be investigated. That wasn't actually, I guess, what it was, though, because that was the headline I saw days ago. I guess a guy by the name of Victor Sengby, who is a black guy, put the ropes in trees a long time ago, months ago, as workout items, and they don't actually really resemble nooses at all. It's more like a swing, according to people in the community that were familiar with them when the mayor started talking about them. So this guy comes out, he goes on TV, he says hey, these aren't the things that everybody thinks they are. It's unfortunate. This is a quote from Victor, who put these items in the trees in the first place. It's unfortunate that a genuine gesture of just wanting to have a good time got misinterpreted into something so heinous. That's his quote, the guy who put the stuff there, who, again, this is a black man who wanted to work out utilizing these items in trees in his area. The mayor of Oakland doesn't care. She said that intention doesn't matter. That is a quote. Intention does not matter. We will not tolerate symbols of hate in our country. The nooses found at Lake Merritt will be investigated as hate crimes. The intention does not matter. Look, I know that we're in an unprecedented time, or certainly in one of a few different times that have existed in the history of our country, where some things are at the forefront of our mind, and we're trying to do as good a job as ever in fixing some of the issues we have as a society, we have as a country, in the systematic oppression that may exist. Intention does matter, though. It does. That you can't say that it doesn't matter. You have the person who put the items in the trees coming out and explaining what they are and why it's being misunderstood. You have people in the community saying it's not really, to us, what it's being described as. It didn't even really look like that. And you have a mayor that may, in my opinion, be trying to score some public points right now by being just completely one-sided on this conversation, even as things are being told to her to disprove the things she's concerned about. She's doubling, tripling, quadrupling down, and she's quoted as saying intentions do not matter. I don't understand how we can get into a world where we all start to behave that way. Intentions don't matter. Crimes don't matter. These are things that I've seen and heard in the last few months, because what matters is one topic and one topic only. And I'm not trying to take away at all from conversations that are valid. I'm just saying that when we do that, we can't go to the extent of not caring about intention anymore. I mean, that is a scary sentence. And the fact that it can be said and kind of just fluffed off, I mean, I doubt that she'll wind up, I don't know if it'll be a voter thing, if anything, that winds up costing her for saying those words. But I imagine that there will be no repercussions whatsoever to a mayor going on television, looking into a camera and saying a sentence that seems to be just utterly flawed. Intentions do not matter. That I don't think that I would ever have assumed that anyone would say something like that. Any sort of public office, any sort of public official in front of a TV camera about any issue, much less a serious and or a not so serious one, that irrelevant as to, you gave me all the proof that what I'm saying is wrong, and I ignored all that proof because now's not a time for facts or things that are truths. Now is a time for the most one-sided reaction as possible and ignoring any and all information that comes in that's the opposite. I've railed against it before, and I'll do it again. This is the fault of social media. This is the fault of Facebook more than anything else. Not just Facebook, but all of them, that you can assume that everyone is so on your side that you could say something as reckless as that, and no one really will wind up calling you on it, except maybe a few guys like me. That I'm dumbfounded as I continue to look at these words and read this story. Intentions do not matter. Are we in that place? Are you in that place yet? Am I in that place yet? Where you can do something by accident and be in a lot of trouble for it, because, and maybe even do something for a completely different intention that's not even what people are saying you just did. And if someone perceives a workout device as something else, well, you're in a whole lot of trouble for it. What are they going to do to the guy? He's admitted that it's him that put the items in there, and they're going to investigate it as a hate crime. So do you have any other defense other than it's not the thing you said it was, and the community doesn't think that, so maybe I'm not guilty? I don't know. If this guy gets in any trouble at all, I will also be dumbfounded, but that is an ongoing situation. That's an ongoing story in the world. Good luck to all of us. Craig Collins filling in on Chad Benson. Be back in a bit.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show with you today. Chad will be back next week. Happy Friday to you. Happy holiday coming up. Happy Father's Day. All kinds of things. 5 takeaways from the John Bolton memoir, according to the New York Times, include an offer of firsthand evidence of the Ukraine matter. That is one of the 5 things that's included in this book, an offer of firsthand evidence on the Ukraine matter, the one that President Trump went through an impeachment process because of, and John Bolton refused to testify in. That makes no sense to me if that's in the book, because why wasn't it provided? Oh, step number 2, according to the New York Times, of things that are in this book, in explaining of the lack of testimony and blaming Democrats for that lack of testimony, saying that he had hoped other people might have been forced to testify and that might have forced him to testify, something to that effect, because, yeah, totally not his fault that he refused to do it. It's somebody else's fault for sure. 3 of the 5 biggest things, according to the New York Times, in this book coming out, singling out episodes of obstruction of justice as a way of life, which is a quote you've seen a lot of places, obstruction of justice as a way of life. Mr. Bolton provides several additional that he thinks are just as bad occurrences as anything else that the president has publicly already been tried for, saying that there's just a bunch of other information. Turkey is one of the places in which he singles out some of the interactions that have gone on. He certainly has mentioned things about the communications that the president of the United States has had with China and their president, President Xi. So there's a lot of different conversations going on, I guess, that John Bolton deems completely inappropriate that you've never heard of before, and he chose to release them all in a book he gets money for and not any other way, describing the toxic environment inside the administration. This is something you've long heard from other individuals who are no longer part of the administration, telling you that it's a very toxic, very difficult culture. So that's in there. That feels like out of the 5 things that the New York Times says are revelations, that feels the least revelation-y to me, because others have accused him of that, the current president of that, quite a bit. This feels like much of the same. It's going to be the boring part of the book, apparently, in my opinion. Battling over what is deemed classified information is actually addressed within the book. So you write a thing, and you know, because of the role you have in government, that some people are going to say that this is potentially highly classified information and shouldn't be put in a document that you're going to make money off of. It should probably be exchanged other ways that don't put our country potentially at risk of stuff that's not supposed to be out there being out there. And so you just argue that in the book. You're just like, this is why this is okay to put out here. Man, so much forethought went into the potential problems that were going to exist with this book. And apparently the New York Times really feels that they're addressed well, which is not terribly surprising. In the epilogue is where Mr. Bolton really tries to hone in on that point. So if you get there, if you make it to the end, then I guess you get to understand why everything you just previously read is totally okay for you to read and not necessarily a terrible thing for our country that it's out there if any of it is true. And this goes back to a point that was made earlier and actually has been made quite a bit by a person that knows John Bolton quite well. This would be his chief of staff, Fred Fleitz, who says that 2 different things. He has 2 different reactions to it. One, and I will play the audio in just a second, if the president can't trust that conversations he has that are supposed to be private are private, and this is any president, this is not just President Trump, then he's going to start having less conversations. And if he has less conversations, it means there's less people that can advise him on what the right decision is when the time comes for a big decision. That would all be bad. And that seems utterly true. Just thinking about it logically, if you walk into a room where you want to hash out an idea or a serious conversation needs to take place, and you're worried that every part of it is being put in a notebook somewhere so that somebody can share it later while they're trying to make money off of the idea. Here's how he said it, though.
Well, I was on your show in January, and I called him to withdraw the book because I don't believe national security advisors should be revealing internal candid discussions with the president. The president has to be able to know that whatever he says in those discussions won't be made public. And if he thinks they're going to be made public, a president won't consult with experts. And I think that's a very dangerous prospect for our national security.
Look, I know the argument on the other side is going to be if he did something that's noteworthy, you got to tell people about it. Again, you don't have to tell people via a book that you make money off of. You can do it other ways. And 2, as far as just responses to that idea, it will be true. If the infighting or, political fighting that exists in our country gets worse and worse. By the way, a lot of the things that have happened to President Trump, I can see being moves that the other side would make when and if there's a different president in the office at some point. I think that the more partisan these political decisions get, the more difficult it's going to be to not see the same retreads of those strategies the next time we switch hands. But let's continue with Fred Fleitz.
Well, I want to talk about this in terms of what John Bolton called the turning point for him with Mr. Trump, which Bolton said was the most irrational thing I ever saw a president do. And this was when President Trump decided last June not to bomb Iran at the advice of John Bolton and other national security advisors. You may remember that a drone was shot down. And at the last minute, President Trump decided he was not going to attack Iran because we would have killed 100 to 200 people. Now, Martha, that was a principled decision. This wasn't to win votes. This wasn't to promote the president domestically. It reflected the president's principle not to get America into additional war.
Now, as far as that goes, that second thought from someone that has known John Bolton for over 30 years, it's not even mentioned in the New York Times article as one of the biggest revelations in the book. Apparently, Mr. Bolton describes this as the turning point for him. This is the moment where he decided he could no longer believe in the president, no longer trust him, and he started to pen more things that were going to inevitably be in a book, I guess, later on. If the turning point for him is the decision the president makes not to combat, not to fight, not to bomb another country, that's an interesting turning point because all it really says to me is that the guy didn't listen to your advice. And as far as I'm concerned, in the situations I've been in my life that I can even attempt to compare something like that to, sometimes when you don't listen to people that feel like they need to give you advice that you have to follow, but you're the one that gets to make the decision at the end of the day, if you don't go their way, they might not like you. They might dislike you, and it might have nothing to do with anything you actually do moving forward. It might 100% just be that now they're upset. Now they're angry, and so the book comes out after that thought. Fred Fleitz goes on to say that it's his opinion that completely disproves the validity of the entire book. Here, I'll let you hear it from him.
And it was an act of leadership because he bucked all of his national security advisors. I mean, Pompeo, the Secretary of Defense. So when we hear that the president doesn't have principles, he's not qualified to lead, this incident that Bolton puts forward as the turning point for his relationship with President Trump, in my mind, it disproves the whole book.
It disproves the whole book. In my mind, it disproves the whole book. That's an interesting take from a guy that would very much know John Bolton pretty well. They've spent 30 years of their career together. They know each other as well as anybody else can know anybody else. And for him to say that, all right, I see the ego. I've pointed out the moment in this guy that I know where the ego got involved. And that, to me, feels like it's the moment where the whole book, every part you read since, is it's all of just additional ego things. Because according to the way that's phrased, too, it's not like John Bolton was the only person giving advice to the president that he ignored. There were other people in the room. But maybe John thought to himself, now it's the time. Now I got to take this guy down because you don't disrespect me. I don't know. That's a feeling that some of us are going to get from that book, I guess, and certainly people who know John Bolton well. I saw this story, and it terrified me. So good luck with you digesting it and understanding it in hopefully a better way. But Florida is going to release a bunch of genetically modified mosquitoes into the population, a bunch of them, 750 million of the bugs, which are annoying at their best and fatal at their worst in Florida Keys, will now have these genetically modified versions in there that I guess they're male mosquitoes, which apparently don't bite people. That's what I'm being told by the representatives in Florida that have made them. And the genetically modified ones might make it harder for the females to continue to populate so that we cut down on the amount of mosquitoes that exist there. But I said a bunch of words that exist within the movie's Jurassic Park. Those are a bunch of things that are part of a movie that eventually brings us dinosaurs and then a bunch of chaos. I don't know that we need to mess with this. I don't know that this is where you dabble. The U.S. Environment Protection Agency has also approved this plan developed by a British biochemist and a company called Oxitec. And while this is giving the go-ahead on another trial run, this is set to take place soon in Texas as well. Despite receiving approval from authorities, the plan has been slammed. It's been slammed quite a bit because of course, the fact that it sounds crazy. we have gone so far to say that some may sue the EPA over this decision. Earlier this week, protesters gathered outside the Florida Keys Mosquito Control District federal office to demand its board oppose the trial. I had no idea that was an office at all. Scientists have also expressed concern about the oversight of the trial because they're just going to release mosquitoes into the world. And then what do you do? If it's going bad, how do you stop that process from continuing to go bad? There's nothing. Once you let these little things out, there's no way to stop that. There's no way to get it back. Haven't we learned from Jeff Goldblum already? Don't we know what the right answer is here? Maybe we got to get him to make a PSA for all of Florida saying, do not genetically modify mosquitoes. That is a bad mistake that has undue consequences that we can all just see coming a mile away. All right, this is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. I want to talk about The Bachelorette. Yes, I have it as a topic here. I thought it was interesting the way in which they're going to try to make sure that TV show is safe. The Bachelorette is safe in a time of COVID-19 and quarantine. I don't know if you're aware of how those shows look, but a lot of people exchange things that probably don't seem safe in the current day and age we're in. I will tell you what precautions they're taking, and I don't think they're enough after this on the Chad Benson Show.
No need to fear. We promise we won't give you a noogie and make you cry Russia, Russia, Russia.
Fui to fearless leader.
Fui.
Fui, and double fui.
What is your language? This is a family show, remember?
Fui to families too.
Nostrovia. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Thrilled to be with you on a Friday. I mentioned The Bachelorette a little bit ago. They have plans to restart filming on the show after it was suspended. Claire Crowley is the name of the most recent Bachelorette, 39 years old. At first, she even complained that the contestants, the guys that were going to try to date her, were too young. So we had to get some guys that were a little bit closer to her in age. So this is being celebrated as a season where we have a Bachelorette who's not in her 20s, which is usually what a lot of the Bachelorettes are age-wise. But that show getting canceled during a time of COVID-19, quarantine, all the stuff that we're worried about from a health perspective, that makes a lot of sense. If you've ever seen an episode, my wife happens to love this show, so I've seen several an episode of both The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. They do some things that would feel very unsafe at the time of COVID-19 and quarantine. Let's just say at least spit is exchanged a whole lot with a whole bunch of individuals you barely know over the course of several weeks. And then candid side camera things happen where you talk about how much love and how you're falling for this person. And then you just keep making out with more individuals. But the executives for ABC have said they're going to restart it. They're going to take every precaution they can to make sure that everyone remains safe, including all the things you've heard before, testing, keeping people inside a bubble, basically, a remote facility where they all shoot, making sure that, I guess, everybody is healthy going in and that they don't interact with anyone that could be sick on the way out. I don't know if they're aware, but there's a whole bunch of people that have no symptoms and wind up being sick with this. And then just in general, if we watch this show, if anyone does, in the fall, and I imagine people do, it's a popular show, it'll be so weird in the back of your mind to be aware of what so many of us were thinking as far as our current health situation. This is the epitome of shows that I would think would take a season off. That would just be like, you know what? No, we can't execute this. I mean, think about the meeting. When the executives got together, when the producers all sat down, they're like, all right, guys, how do we make The Bachelor and Bachelorette safe in a time of COVID-19? And probably somebody who then immediately got fired raised the hand in the back is like, I don't think we can do that. And then they were out. They're like, no, you're gone. We got to be able to make it so that everybody can make out for several weeks in a row on TV with like 20 to 30 individuals. And that just makes sense. That's going to be fine. That's not socially distant. I'm going to say that. And are they going to wear masks? Because that is going to make it a very different experience if that's how they do that kind of thing. Maybe you find some way around it. I don't know. But yeah, they're going to do what everyone else is trying to do to get things going, and they're going to epically fail. Probably no one will get sick, hopefully, knock on wood. I don't mean it that way. I just mean there's no way that you can follow all the guidelines on a show like that. Moving forward, I saw another story in the news that I thought was interesting, and I'd like to get to just a little bit. I guess vegetarians are people who are both, yes, skinnier than people that don't eat meat, but also less outgoing, according to a recent article, scientific study that took place in Germany. Apparently, meat might make you more outgoing, and it's kind of a weird reason why. I guess vegetarians find it harder to socialize with people who aren't vegetarians because going to things like restaurants is difficult, and so they just socialize less often. It's not necessarily that they're just shyer people to begin with, but their lifestyle hampers their social ability to interact. That is a really intriguing and odd kind of study that I wouldn't have seen coming. They just wind up less socially active. So I'm not a vegetarian. I love myself meat. I very much want a bacon bouquet for Father's Day, even though I'm not a father. But I do, I guess, sort of kind of understand how this could happen, but maybe you just own it. Maybe you just go into those situations and you go, yeah, I'm just going to sit here at this restaurant with all my friends, eat nothing because I don't trust any of the products, and maybe bring a lunch from home. I don't know, but this is an odd story and kind of something I never really expected scientists to study. And I do just think scientists are bored a lot because we went with a lot of time there where we couldn't do our normal things. So they were being more and more less choosy, I should say. They're being more liberal with the decision-making they're making as to what they would and wouldn't study. And this definitely seems like an example of that. All right. There is one more serious story that I can talk about here, and I should save it because I don't have a lot of time. I've got to take a break soon. But the officer who's accused of killing Rayshard Brooks has been moved. He was in jail. Garrett Rolfe is his name, and he had to be moved out of the Fulton County Jail for security reasons. That is part of a story, part of a longer story about both officers who I think are going to be part of some court proceedings today. And obviously, moving forward, this is going to be a longer story than some might want it to be. It's going to take time. The officers said that they have faith in the justice system, but just think about the fact that these officers turned themselves in. They were put into a county jail, and then for the security of Garrett Rolfe, he had to be removed from that facility within just 24 hours or so of being put in to that facility. This is a issue that certainly is not going to go away, that certainly is going to have a lot of different layers and conversations to it, and one that it's interesting and sort of, I guess, somewhat motivating to me to hear that the officers have faith in the justice system. I hope everyone does. I hope everyone does. Anyone that thinks they did something wrong or right, I hope that everyone shares in that opinion, that you wait for the justice system to play this case out correctly. Again, I'm not trying to say that I think what happened was right or wrong. I'm just saying that the way in which we're reacting today to this kind of stuff, the way in which we're treating this situation now, we're probably getting to a point that we need to allow the time that's necessary for legal proceedings to take place, for them to take place, and not necessarily try to do this any other way, because that is the opinion I get. That's the reaction I have to a story that starts with the headline that within 24 hours, Garrett Rolfe had to be removed from the county jail that he was in for fear and security reasons. If the man winds up being innocent of the crimes he's been accused of, and they are crimes that some feel are much harsher than maybe what should have been deserved, and yet he's not capable of concluding that process, that legal process, because something were to happen, that obviously is a situation that no one, I think, would want to see happen. So, Craig Collins, Chad Benson Show. More after this.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. I will start by talking about Dr. Anthony Fauci here because he's in the news again. Dr. Fauci is someone that you heard from a lot for a while, and people had a lot of opinions on, both pro and not pro. And then you stopped hearing from him for the most part because we stopped doing the coronavirus task force briefings that were a part of our everyday life for a bit. But Dr. Fauci recently in an interview said that he does not think that there will be a second reoccurrence of the virus to the extent that there would need to be a lockdown. He predicts no more U.S. lockdowns. He said he's confident in vaccine efforts getting better and better. The U.S. leads the world in the number of confirmed cases of both infection and death as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But Dr. Fauci, who long was criticized by some and praised by others as being a critic, or at least someone who disagreed with some of the comments made by the president at those same press briefings that existed. He said, I don't think we're going to be talking about going back to lockdown. I think we're going to be talking about trying to better control those areas of the country that seem to be having a surge of cases. This is something the president has said as well. Countries where there are certainly no cases at all, counties where there's certainly no cases at all, there's no problem with the schools opening there, he said. There are other parts where there are a modest amount of infections where you may delay school openings, but again, considers a lot of places to be capable of opening schools in the fall. Some regions where he thinks, of course, there are still strong outbreaks might need to reconsider that. You want to make some modifications of the process, namely alternative days, morning versus afternoon, seating people apart from each other, but going back to school and keeping our economy open and not going back to a lockdown are things that even Dr. Fauci thinks make sense as we go forward, as we get back to the fall season. But as he said all that, I actually also saw a take from Dr. Fauci talking about how he doesn't think NFL football is possible because he thinks it might be too challenging to make sure everyone is safe there. And maybe the difference is any infection whatsoever. Maybe Dr. Fauci in his mind, maybe not telling us exactly that way, is he feels at least one person in the NFL could get sick, and that's too many. But as far as people in societies where there's very little illness, if some people do get sick and hopefully not seriously, maybe that makes sense as far as keeping our economy reopened. But that are the latest thoughts of Dr. Anthony Fauci, which is someone that I reference from time to time because I know people have opinions on either side as far as Dr. Fauci is concerned. But when he says things that are in line with the president, I almost feel like it's my duty to tell you about those things. I also saw this, shifting gears entirely. The University of Florida will end its cheer that's called the Gator Bait among sites of racism. Well, the University of Florida has acknowledged the fact that the song itself, their anthem, has no connection to racial issues. The name of the song is historically tied to racist imagery, and for that reason, they will discontinue use of that song for all of their university athletics, and the Gator Band will discontinue playing it entirely to move on to something else that is not linked to those issues. This is an interesting story to me, and I wonder if it is to you, because the choice to change this song has nothing to do with the song itself other than what it's called. They acknowledge, the university as well as several others, that there is no connection between that music itself and any sort of racial injustice, any sort of racial history. It is just the term and what it incites, what a lot of people feel to be the issue. I don't know how many more things like this will occur and what the right decision is. It's hard for me to weigh in entirely. I'm going to be honest because, I'm not a person who falls in a group that might be offended by even just the name of that song because I'm a white guy. So I guess for me, I have a certain level of way of living that might be unfair when I discuss this issue. At the same time, though, if you acknowledge that the song itself has nothing to do with any of the racial issues that exist in our world, then why not just rename it? Why not just change the name of the song? Obviously, we've been talking a lot about different companies that are changing the names of their products, changing the imagery of their products, anything that they feel is tied to what has now been a kind of universal and growing consensus in America. I saw a recent poll that a wide majority of Americans agree that systematic oppression is real and needs to be dealt with, needs to be changed. And as we do that, we might be considering a lot of different things as potentially part of the problem that we may be overstepping in some ways. I'm not sure if you agree, and I'm not sure which ways in which we overstep, trying to be careful about how I say this, but the song itself, if not tied to any of that other than the name, okay, all right. I don't totally understand it. That's all I'm going to say. All right, let me move on. Let me move on to something that I was just debating with my producer because I'm not sure if it's real. I kind of hope it's real, and I don't know why I hope it's real, but I do. I kind of hope it's real. It is a photo of a newscast, news coverage taking place in New Orleans on WWL-TV. They're always on your side. They're talking about the reopening of parts of their economy via the Phase 2 that everyone's getting ready for. It is a news reporter facing a camera, although you only see half of the news reporter because there's a focus to this photo. There's an important spot to it. Then you see a whole bunch of people outside, standing outside a restaurant on their phones, maybe sharing drinks, having a good time in New Orleans. And none of them are wearing any masks of any kind. I don't know what the report was about, but it might have been about that. It might not have been. But people are getting ready for Phase 2. maskless people, except one guy. There's one guy in the corner who's definitely rocking a mask. He is also wearing nothing else. He is completely nude and facing the camera. So my question is, did a news guy, a camera guy, not notice this individual? And is this real? Or is there a chance that this is fake and it has duped one Craig Collins? Because the image is hilarious and it is edited, so you don't have to actually get scarred when you look at it. You can make it out okay, but it's just a guy facing camera. I think he's got glasses on, sunglasses, and a mask, and nothing else. And I don't know if that's a protest. I don't know if that's how you protest certain things, but to me, I need it. I need the help. Someone has to tell me if this is real or not, because I just need to know if that happened. I don't understand how or why it could have happened, but I need to know. The news is on your side in New Orleans, and now I need you to be on my side to help me figure it out. All right, let's switch to even sillier things somehow. I guess maybe sillier. There was a survey about ketchup. I don't know how you feel about ketchup. I feel certain ways about it, and obviously as we get into the grilling season more and more, it's going to be a utilized product, heavily utilized. I was in Chicago for a long time, actually. Chicago hates ketchup. Other places, not so much. These are items that people put it on, though, and some of them, toward the bottom of the list, are surprising. The percentage of people that put ketchup on pasta, 9%. As an Italian, I'm offended. As an Italian, I'm upset by that because that's a terrible move. Sandwiches, other than the most typical ones that you would have on ketchup, appear on 14%. We'll put them on pretty much any sandwich. A grilled cheese, 21% of people. Throw a little bit of tomato on there. It doesn't. Oh. Eggs, 29%. Totally makes sense. Chicken nuggets, 69% of people put ketchup on a chicken nugget. I've never done that in my life. That seems totally wrong, and that sounds gross. There's way better dipping sauces in the world of the chicken nugget, but that's just me. A hamburger, 82% of people. Fries, 83%. Hot dog, 85% of people utilizing the ketchup. 14% say they eat it with a spoon by itself. Those people are nuts. Anybody that just drops some ketchup onto a spoon and is like, oh, this tastes delicious. This is wonderful. I don't know. Tell us in social media how you feel about that. Go to Chad Benson on Twitter or Facebook or The Craig Collins Show if you want to tell me, because I'm the idiot who talked about this story on the air. But tell us what you think about the amount of uses of ketchup, because those opinions are always very strong. It's one of a few topics you can't talk about. You can't walk into certain circles, especially in places like Chicago, and mention politics and or ketchup, because you're going to have a lot of opinions all over the place. I mentioned this earlier in the show. I think it's still interesting to discuss, though. Tiffany Haddish has a solution for how we solve racism, and it's extreme. Tiffany Haddish feels that if women withhold certain things from men, that the problems can be fixed. She says this because she does this from time to time when she's having a fight with the man in her life. She just withholds, and then everything gets better pretty quickly. So that is her real advice. She is quoted as saying, when I have a problem and I want to solve it, I just stop doing that and everything's solved. So if everybody just stopped having that, especially if you are in a relationship where maybe people are different races, we're totally going to get this fixed. If white men don't have that anymore, everything will change. That is her real opinion. And other than tell you about it, I'm not sure that I have a lot of comments on it. But that I wonder if she was joking. I hope she was joking. I really hope she was joking, because these seem like disconnected issues to me. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a guy who doesn't want to see that other thing happen. Living to be 100, a study of Centurions show that neighborhood may be one of the biggest things that helps you live a long life. And what we mean by that is that you have neighbors who care about you, who you care about and interact with. So there's a social element to the place in which you live, even growing up. It's beyond just that social element, but it comes to the way in which you trust a community, the way in which you maybe have different anxieties that could or couldn't exist. But your neighbors may be capable of helping you be healthier, according to this very interesting study that comes out of Spokane, Washington. So the next time, I guess, you go to your house and you feel like people aren't interacting enough, you might be able to accuse the neighbor of putting your health at jeopardy if you don't talk and have a walkable, social community in which you live. That is right. The socioeconomic people that studied this demonstrated that the individuals who come from communities that are very close-knit are most likely to live to be 100 years old. How do you like that? Your neighbors, they're very important in the way in which you go about your life as far as health is concerned. This is the Chad Benson Show. I am Craig Collins filling in. It is a Friday. Happy Friday to you all. Father's Day coming up. Juneteenth is a holiday that is coming up. So happy holidays to everyone. A quick break and a lot more.
Take a fake news break. Check out the really important news of the day at our website, ChadBensonShow.com. Once there, click on Chad's free podcast and get real. The Chad Benson Show, where truth and the American way live. Rent free.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Thrilled to be with you on a Friday. Hope you're having a good Friday so far. Better Friday than this guy who drives a Porsche, although just the fact that he owns a Porsche is pretty sweet. The force with the Porsche is what this story is being called. A guy in a luxury car was trying to tow a hot tub behind him, and it was not set up well. In a photo and a video that have gone viral, the guy's in Canada. He's driving, and he's just kind of towing it behind him, and it's bouncing because it's on what is being described as a rickety wood rig, but the dude's got a Porsche. I mean, there's a certain level of money you got to have to risk damage to Porsche because you want to get the hot tub across town. Like, that's a certain level of life that I don't think I'll ever find. You can rent vehicles at all kinds of locations that are much less fancy than Porsches to move this hot tub in a much different way. But no, man, I'll figure this out. I got some tools on my belt here, and I'll make it work. Had this hot tub become unattached from the homemade trailer that it was being towed on, one of the people who pulled this guy over said it would have caused some serious damage and injuries. Luckily, that did not happen. The car's 54-year-old driver was cited for careless driving. He did not really react to the fact that people thought it was a terrible idea, what he was trying to do. A local hot tub installer provided another photo of the contraption. While the 968 isn't your typical tow vehicle, in some countries it is rated as a pull of 1,200 kilograms or whatever. So it's a valuable trailer to some, not valuable to others. But just in all honesty, the fact that he's got this rickety wood contraption on the back of his Porsche and he's trying to tow, like that's as affluent as it gets. And I'm not judging people for having money, but that is a level of finances that a lot of us, I don't think, can comprehend. If you're driving a fancy, very expensive sports car and you're towing another product that I think is tied to a lot of fanciness, that is, and he was by himself. I don't know if he came up with this alone, if no one would help the guy move the hot tub. So he's just like, I can get this done. But again, I'm just trying to tell him and anyone out there that's curious about it, you can for sure rent all kinds of vehicles, all kinds of places to not have to do this. I want to talk about the campaign, the presidential campaigns that are taking place. Obviously, there's going to be a rally for the president that a lot of people are on opposing sides as to whether or not that makes sense. A lot of the news coverage for the rally would be on one side, feeling that it's inappropriate for a president to hold a rally of this kind. I don't know where you stand on this. I'm curious where a lot of people fall. I think that a lot of individuals, especially those who want to go to something like this, feel like it's their right to make a decision. That's part of the American world in which we live. You get the chance to make any and all decisions for your own safety. And if it's not risking a lot of others' safety, then you should be allowed to do a lot of different things. And I think that's where the argument then comes in play. Some people will say this is putting other people at jeopardy. But what is being pointed out by the White House press secretary and a lot of other individuals is the difference between the conversations about protesting, including a protest in New York that's going to have 1 million people attend it, 1 million or so, and then the conversation of any sort of rally that the president wants to have. During the protest conversation, no one says anything about potential health issues. And I get that you're being respectful to especially peaceful protesters' right to protest, but not even mentioning, for the most part, that there might be some health issues that come up with that in the current way in which we're living is a little interesting. And then to just comment constantly on the fact that the rally needed to not happen, the presidential rally, because of health issues, it does feel two-sided to me. I don't know if a lot of people will go. I think that ticket sales demonstrate maybe a lot of people will, and maybe a lot of people are interested in doing so. The representatives of the area, the politicians that are there, seem to think that this is the kind of thing that's going to be fine. Obviously, they have curfews and stuff imposed, but for the most part, I think we even saw the mayor saying something to the effect of President Trump supporters are good people, so he's not worried about it getting out of hand. This is going to be a rally, though, that obviously the president feels is important, his supporters feel is important, and it's something that, as an American, again, I fall back on the side of if it's your choice to go or not go, that's kind of what this country is about. You get to make that call, and if it's the wrong call, hopefully it's not a horrible thing for a lot of people, but if it's the wrong call, that is on you as well. But you should, I guess, be allowed to attend the protest or the rally, if you want to, just like you can attend a protest if that's how you feel. The Trump campaign is also pushing for multiple debates with former Vice President Joe Biden. They want 4, and they want them to start ASAP. One of the reasons the campaign is giving is that with all the health things going on, it makes sense to get these debates going sooner rather than later. I agree, and I want to see a bunch of debates. I don't know if Kamala Harris is going to be some sort of sidekick that gets roped in there once she becomes the vice presidential candidate, which I think everyone sees coming, because Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, I don't know who wins that matchup, but it's a very interesting matchup, and I certainly think that Joe might have some unforced errors, which might be very wildly entertaining to a lot of us. But 4 debates instead of the typical amount, and that they start sooner rather than later, are all things I can absolutely get behind. More so than the rally stuff. This is an easy one. Yes, let's do it. Let's do it now. You don't even have to do it in person. You can socially distance easily. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show with you on a Friday. Happy Friday to you. Happy Father's Day coming up. Happy Juneteenth for those that celebrate Juneteenth. TikTokers are obsessed with Barron Trump, apparently. TikTok, if you don't know what it is a social media platform. And a lot of people seem at times to be oddly obsessed with Barron Trump, the youngest of Donald Trump and Melania Trump's kids. Apparently, people on this social media platform, which is predominantly young people, I think this is one of the younger social media platforms out there, have a hashtag called Save Barron 2020. It has been trending, and people put up videos of ideas of how to save the president's youngest child from his family. That is an awkward sentence, as I even say it, but this is something that apparently a lot of the social media kids are quite they're very much enjoying, to put up these videos, these ideas, these descriptions of ways in which you get Barron away from his mom and dad. I'm not sure how I feel about that or just the viralness of it, but it's so weird that Barron Trump is a topic of conversation, or that I even talk about him now, because that's a child. You know, for any way in which you dislike or like a human being, and certainly a public one like the President of the United States, it shouldn't always fall on all the people surrounding said president. And certainly I think the bar probably stops at children. I think the children are the ones that you don't really obsess that much about. I mean, even when President Obama was in office, his daughters were talked about, but I don't think to anywhere near the extent that Barron gets news coverage from time to time. And this is just odd. This is just very strange. 114 million views on some of the videos with the hashtag Save Barron 2020. Hashtag from social media platform TikTok, a video platform for predominantly kids and young people trying to do everything they can to save children. They're actually also, it's weird, there's another story about TikTok and how apparently Gen Z hates millennials. That's 2 different generations that I don't think are always terribly well liked by any other generation. But apparently now there's infighting between the two. Gen Z would be those younger than a millennial. Millennial is one that's derided constantly by just about everybody, including even millennials, myself included. I am one, and I make fun of us from time to time. But I guess a lot of the things the Gen Z people are saying on the platforms are things everyone agrees with. Things to the extent of got to get over avocado toast, which, by the way, just real quick, and I don't mean to rant for a long time on avocado toast, but as a guy in my 30s who is a millennial, I don't get how we're tied to that. I don't understand. One, I don't understand why it's bad, I guess. If avocado toast is a healthy version of toast, I don't know why that's a bad thing to like a lot, other than it's just fancy. But 2, I've never had it. I've never tried it, never had it one time. So I really don't get how that's a thing. I'm not going to die on this hill. It's totally fine if that's one of the ways you disparage us. Other things that apparently Gen Z feels millennials need to get over are stop comparing everything to Harry Potter. I think that's kind of funny. Stop complaining about things that, are normal millennial complaints, something to the effect of you can't move out from mom and dad's house. This is a Gen Z person saying this. You can't move out from somebody's house because you don't have a good enough job. You shouldn't have taken out student loans. These are attacks the younger people are taking on millennials. So it's an interesting world in which we live. Apparently, everybody hates them, even those younger than us. And millennials discovered a lot of this stuff on these social media platforms and are just very confused. They didn't know that the hate was going all sides and that it was going to be a thing. But hey, guess what? Generations, they don't always seem to get along. And if you throw a lot of hate some directions, you throw a lot of criticism certain ways, I guess you can't be shocked when some of it's hitting you, even from those that are younger than you. And that is something that's currently happening and making me laugh a lot. There's a lot of these I can't read. There's several of these that I can't tell you about. All right, let's shift gears to something a tad more serious, something that's actually kind of interesting in the way in which this occurred. So there has been a lot of protesting, a lot of conversation as to the way in which systematic oppression is real, and it impacts a lot of the different parts of our society. Because of that, a lot of companies are doing everything they can to seem super woke or to empower and give opportunities to those that might not have had them before. This is a very small company and a business owner, an African-American guy. He's 20. He is a California-based video editor that went into a Facebook group that has all kinds of video editors in it on, I guess, across any kind of spectrum, and he said he was looking for Black union video editors only. Please send him a direct message if you know someone that applies, because he'd like to help get them some work. And people had feelings. People had feelings all over the place on this story. A lot of the video editors who were not Black, a lot of the white people in the group, thought that was almost anti-white or anti-racism in and of itself. They were calling it anti-white racism and reverse discrimination. And he said, when caught up about it, the founder, the guy, the 20-year-old who put out this post initially, that those 11 words set off a firestorm leading to racist posts in this community, heated debates and discrimination, and several members of the group, including myself, deeply offended by the responses that white editors gave to my efforts to try to get more editors of color some kind of a gig. When I read through all this, though, I don't know if being that direct about the way in which you're trying to get something done, the way in which you're trying to help, doesn't make sense, that it offends some people. What I'm trying to say is that if you put in a group of individuals looking for work that you want a specific type of individual for that job, if you put it out there like that, you can, I think, desire it. Well, there's ways in which I think maybe legally you're not exactly allowed to hire based on certain criteria, but there's a lot of gray area in that. But it would be odd to me if you were someone, a younger person looking for a job, and you see a post where there's jobs available and you are 100% excluded because of the color of your skin, and then you get mad about it and you're told that you shouldn't be mad about it. That is something that does seem to be a little bit more complicated at best to me. And certainly, I guess, the reaction that was had and the differing opinions that exist there. Yeah, this is a story that's gone a little bit viral to the extent that even well-known filmmakers and directors have voiced opinions on it. One of those is Anna Duvray, I think is how you say her name, but she has actually won some awards. Everyone has a right to their opinion, and we, Black producers with hiring power, have the right to not hire those who diminish us. So to the white men in this thread, if you don't get that job you were up for, kindly remember, bias can go both ways. This is 2020 speaking. Look, you can be a proponent for all kinds of changes in our society that help to empower those who have not had the kind of opportunities that they should have had because of reasons that are not fair and not their fault. But being so out there about being so, I don't know what a better word for, direct about the way in which you discuss this sort of thing, and even just tweet something, a well-known movie director, to put something out there, if you don't get that job, which you're kindly up for, realize bias goes both ways. This is 2020 speaking. I don't know. I feel like this is a delicate water for me to weigh in on as I'm trying to do it, but I'm sure that a lot of people that are hearing this and I'm talking to understand the way in which, while we try to fix certain things in society, we might misstep in some ways. And I even flash back to another conversation I was having earlier on in the show where a mayor took an interview, and during the interview said that intent didn't matter when she was investigating something that she believed had racial tones that then later apparently did not. have a racial component to it. This would be the hanging of some what was called nooses, but actually the person who put them up, a black guy in the community, actually put them up to work out with them, and it was more like a swing, according to people there. But the mayor took the stage and said that she didn't care about intent, which is very confusing. It's very difficult to navigate certain waters if the conversation happening winds up being a bit extreme at times. And certainly, to say the least, when you say things like, I don't care about intent, you feel to me like you are being maybe more in the extreme mindset than the more rational mindset. But that is my own opinion, of course. Let's shift gears to something sillier that I'm not as afraid of getting in trouble for. A drunk monkey has gotten life behind bars. That is right. It's a drunk monkey. Most people would not consider a 2-foot-tall monkey to be much of a danger. But this guy, who I guess was known to snack on products at a zoo that had elements of alcohol in them, would get hammered and then attack people. He attacked about 250 different people. This is in India, who would come to the zoo in which his zookeepers had him there. He certainly dealt with some issues over those 3 years in which he was doing this, and eventually he was deemed too dangerous to be in the zoo any longer, so he has gotten life. But that is actually the headline from the New York Post. Drunk monkey gets life behind bars for attacking 250 humans. And I liked that it had to add humans at the end and not 250, people or 250 something else, because it's a monkey and it's turning on the humans. The monkey is 6 years old. It was ultimately brought to the zoo when people realized that it was a little bit too hostile to be in the wild. So that's never a good move. If you're the kind of person that's like, we got this animal, this whatever it is in the wild, and it's kind of bad, let's put it in the zoo where people are going to go look at it. That's probably a bad strategy, in my opinion. But in doing that, then, you got to get to the world in which eventually, after 250 people are attacked, and no one is seriously injured, by the way, because I don't think the monkey had had access to anything that would really damage you. And again, it's a 2-foot-tall animal, but that would be scary. I got to be honest, if you went to the zoo and there was an inebriated, hostile creature in the zoo that was just, attacking people daily, I'm not sure that that's an attraction. I'm pretty sure that that's a deterrent to being at that zoo, to going although maybe not. I guess if you stay far enough away and it's not you, each of us has a dark sense of humor sometimes, so maybe the opposite holds true. But nonetheless, I guess the monkey will be taken out of any sort of exhibit. And unfortunately, and I just like the title. To be honest, I told you this whole story. I went through the whole thing because the New York Post writer who put that title out there knows he was joking. He knows after he wrote it, he's like, yeah, that's a pretty good one. Drunk monkey gets life behind bars for attacking 250 humans. That you didn't need every part of that, but you put it in because you wanted to make a guy like me laugh. A company plans a space tour using high-altitude balloons. I guess everybody's jealous of Elon Musk and his ability to send people into space with SpaceX, and now everyone's going to try to privatize some version of the space experience. This is called Spaceship Neptune. It's operated by a company called Space Perspective that leases some of its facilities from NASA. It will carry 8 passengers at a time on 6-hour flights. The passenger cabin, lifted by a huge hydrogen-filled balloon, will climb at a sedate 12 miles per hour to an altitude of 30 miles up. That will be followed by a slow descent to splash down in the Atlantic Ocean, where a recovery ship will be standing by to rescue the cabin and the crew. Would you do this? I guess is the only question I have as I go through all this. Would you board Spaceship Neptune and fly around and get a tour of space via a balloon? I don't know that is enough technology for me. You got Musk doing it with a bunch of Alexa devices probably strapped into his rocket. He's firing people up into space in. And then you got these guys trying to go completely the other way about it. Test flights will be carried out for scientific research, mind you, with payloads that are similar to that of humans starting next year. And the first flight carrying actual people is expected to take place within the next 3-4 years. Maybe if you got this as a gift from someone, you'd feel like you have to go. As with everything else I say all the time, I would never want to be the first person to try something out. I would be way down the line to make sure that it's gone okay. And by the way, tickets for this experience, if it's something that you wind up being interested in, if you want to splurge and get it for dad this time of year, even though it's not going to happen for a few years, $125,000 a pop. $125,000 a person to get in a balloon and hope that you get just enough into space for it to be safe, and then you splash down into the ocean and get rescued by people. Oh, man, every part of that. It kind of sounds like it's a makeshift version of Apollo 13. and then I gotta figure my way out. I feel like Tom Hanks should be involved somehow in this project, and then it really sells it. But that's probably more expensive than $125,000 a person. I don't think he's a cheap talent to add to this kind of thing. All right, this is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. More soon.
I'm so tired. I'm exhausted.
If you're part of the politically exhausted majority, don't fear. Your time to be validated and rejuvenated is here. Wake up. It's the Chad Benson Show.
Craig Collins filling in on a Friday on the Chad Benson Show. Chad is back next week. Thrilled to be here with you. Kellyanne Conway being in the news this whole week because maybe she got some work done. That's a thing that people have been talking about all week. I see that a plastic surgeon has weighed in, an expert. Stephen Greenberg is his name. He has said that if any work has been done on Kellyanne, who looks smoother, apparently, according to some, that maybe it is the cause of injections like Botox and either fat transfer to the face or fillers, an upper and lower eyelid lift, facelift, and or a nose job. That's a lot of different things. Greenberg notes that her cheekbones seem lifted and she doesn't seem to have an extra skin around her eyes like she used to have. Nose tip is more sharper, is a lot sharper and smaller as well. This is not the only person to be in the news over the last few weeks to potentially have had a bunch of work done, although it is weird to talk about how different Kellyanne might look over the last few days. And maybe, I don't know, since there's always been a lot of reports as to her and her significant other and how much they disagree, maybe some of this work being done is because Kellyanne might be back on the market. I'm not saying I know anything. I'm just saying that every so often when you see that kind of thing, I think one of the Kardashians has also been involved in this a lot. And even though when I look at Kellyanne, I still see predominantly the same human. Maybe I see a little bit of a difference. When I look at the Kardashian, I think it's, I don't know which one, Khloe, Kimmy, somebody. She looks starkly different as a human, so I totally get why maybe there's a little bit more of a conversation there. But yeah, Kellyanne Conway maybe had work done. People cared about it all week long. In other news, just making 2020 feel as appropriately 2020 as possible, volcanoes that are long been thought extinct may be recharging. And I quote, recharging, according to some experts. Some of these volcanoes exist in China. I guess they've discovered that the chambers have filled with molten lava after being dead for something as long as 500,000 years or more. That's not great news. That's exactly, I think that someone had recently reported, too, that they had redone the math and that the Mayan calendar actually predicted the end of the world in 2020 as opposed to some other time. And that person wound up getting completely booed off of Twitter because we don't need those takes right now. Whatever scientists figured this out, that some volcanoes might slowly be coming back to life, I didn't need it. I didn't need to know it. We could have left that one aside and maybe just told the people in the area impacted, and no one else because, I could have skipped that story this year. One last final thing that I found amusing, and only because of the need to do it, a bus called the Into the Wild bus that has long been abandoned in part of our country is going to have to be removed because too many people tried to get to it, and it caused years for the Alaska Department of Transportation of rescues to individuals trying to hike to the bus. It was called an Into the Wild bus. It was 25 miles into one of the state parks there, and it's been there for about 60 years. It did cause some serious things to happen at times, sadly, including a couple of people that tried to explore and lost their lives. But for the most part, these were people that were not equipped to try to get all the way to the bus that eventually had to be airlifted out of an area to keep them from doing harm to themselves. I'm glad they moved it. I don't think that's a thing that should have taken 60 years to move. If for whatever reason a whole bunch of people need to go there, even after horrible things are happening, you got to take matters into your own hands. You can't keep allowing people to go to the bus if apparently the bus is tremendously difficult to get to and no one is making the right call there. There is a 1996 best-selling book called Into the Wild that the bus was named after, I guess. But it's been a tourist attraction for a long time and one of the more terrible ones, I guess, that exist in the area. But hey, that's all over now. I guess I can also mention this. Bourbon was found under a statue that was recently removed in Kentucky. Really old bourbon, and the bottle might have been mostly empty. But there is hope then, I guess, if we remove more things like that maybe we find more bourbon? I don't know. That'd be a great prize. If anything else happens in that regard, at least you can all hope that there's really awesome old-aged bourbon under any of this stuff. All right, Craig Collins filling in. This is the Chad Benson Show.
Chad Benson Show.